coming to you live from the Vermont Wild Kitchen.
I've got this walleye right here. Came out from Lake Champlain.
So we're going to do a quick savory bread pudding. You need some old bread. I used some sourdough that I had made like over a week ago that was getting stale and then we didn't get to.
Starting on either side of the dorsal and down along the belly, just behind the head down to the tail. That's your fillet. After I turn them over, I'm going to show you how to make a tartar sauce. Again, that's how my family likes to eat it.
Just load that up, make sure everything's all tossed up in there. And you're just going to pour your custard on top.
Really good.
All right. So, hi, everybody. Welcome to the Vermont Wild Kitchen. My name's Shane Rogers, and I work for the Vermont Farm to Plate Network. And I'm here with Shawn Good, who is a biologist with the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department. We're really excited for you all to join us tonight. We are going to be talking fish and talking some savory bread pudding with a fun cocktail to top us off. So first and foremost, for folks who are not familiar, the Vermont Wild Kitchen is a collaboration between Vermont Fish and Wildlife and Rooted in Vermont, which is a program of the Vermont Farm to Plate Network. And what we're really trying to do here is just bring you into our kitchens and show you just how easy and just how delicious it can be to not only cook with wild ingredients, but also pair those up with the farm fresh ingredients that can be found throughout Vermont. So without further ado, I'm going to throw this over to Shawn Good, who is going to be showing folks not only how to process the wonderful walleye that can be found here, but also how to cook it up. So if you all have any questions about fishing, about processing fish, about whatever he's doing, please feel free to drop those in the chat. And with that being said, Shawn, we're going to give it to you to take away.
Great. Thanks a lot, Shane. Can everybody hear me okay? You can hear me fine, Shane?
Yeah. There we go.
All right, great. So thanks for coming. As Shane said, my name's Shawn Good. I'm a fisheries biologist with Vermont Fish and Wildlife. And I was asked today to talk a little bit about fish cooking and cleaning. So the topic today is walleye. I'm here in my kitchen at home. I got my cameraman, which is my son, holding the phone. Say hi.
Hello.
So he's going to follow me around here as I do different things with the walleye. But I guess just to start out with, we're going to show you what a walleye looks like. And it's really great. We're fortunate here in Vermont to have a pretty amazing diversity of fishing opportunities. And our lakes and ponds have lots of different fish species that are sustainable, managed well by biologists for recreational purposes, whether it's sport fishing and catch and release, or keeping a few for having a locally sourced healthy food option that we have access to as anglers here in Vermont. So today, like I said, we're going to talk about walleye. So I've got this walleye right here. It's freshly caught just a couple of days ago. I've had it on ice ever since. Came out from Lake Champlain. Was caught up in the islands area of Lake Champlain, like I said, just a few days ago. So nice fresh walleye. This is a member of the Percidae family, so it's closely related to yellow perch. And if anybody has ever eaten yellow perch before, you know how good that is. And walleye arguably is either number one or number two to yellow perch, depending on who you talk to. Fillet off this thing. And what I'm doing right now is just kind of wiping it down just to get the mucus coating off the fish. This is something you want to do whether you have a fresh fish that you just caught that day or it's been on ice for a couple of days. Just going to dry it off a little bit, makes it a little bit easier to clean. Normally I would do this out in the garage or down in the basement. I'm doing it in my kitchen today, and that's only because my wife is at work. If If she was here, she would kill me, and I would be downstairs in the basement right now. So basically, to start out here, we're just going to take a little close-up look at the fish. Down its back, you have this dorsal spine right here, and what we're going to do is take the fillet off both sides of the back, starting on either side of the dorsal and down along the belly, just behind the head down to the tail. That's your fillet. And so it's a little important to kind of know fish anatomy in that sense. So have a good sharp fillet knife. Make sure it's sharp. I like to start with this side of the fish up, so the right side of the fish, and you're going to lift up its pectoral fin. The fin closest to the head. You're just going to put your head behind it. There's a bony plate right here called the opercular. That's what protects and covers the gills, which are just inside there, and that's hard bone. I want to come just back behind there to where the opercular ends, and you feel the soft flesh there. And you're just going to make a sort of a horizontal cut or vertical cut right down from the belly. So we're just going to start here. I'm going to come right down through. I sharpened this right before we started. There we go. We're going to come right down until you feel resistance. And what I'm hitting there as I came down through that is the backbone of the fish. So once I've done that, I'm going to then turn the knife blade. Come over to the other side here, bud. I'm going to turn the knife blade so the cutting edge is facing down the length of the fish, and I'm going to insert the point just opposite the dorsal fin here. And I'm just going to take that. You just see I'm just using the top inch or two of the knife, and I'm just kind of sawing and slicing as I go down the back, and I'm basically following the spine. Once I get close to the end of the tail, I'm going to take that knife, I'm going to push it all the way through so it comes out. And then I'm going to finish off by coming down to the tail with that sawing motion. So that's the first step, is making that first 2 incisions, behind the head and then down the back. Once I've done that, I'm going to take my thumb and I'm just going to lift the flesh up, and I'm going to take the tip of the knife and I'm just going to cut it from the bones as you cut. And what you want to do is turn your knife up and away from the bones. That way you're likely to get a more boneless fillet. And there's one thing I hate about eating fish is when it hasn't been filleted boneless. Nobody likes getting fish bones. So what I'm doing is just kind of prying and putting a little bit of pressure on the flesh with my thumb as I lift it up and away, and sort of just cut just with the tip. I don't know if you can hear that. That's the tip of my knife hitting the rib cage. When you feel that or hear that, you just want to turn your knife blade away from the ribs so you follow the edge of that rib cage and not cut through them. That way the ribs are left in the fish and not in the fillet. And you'll know you've reached the belly when you start seeing this white lining here on the inside of the flesh. That's the peritoneum. And you don't really want that. You can eat it, but best what I like to do is when you get there, I then take my knife and I just basically cut that fillet off just above the peritoneum, all the way down until you get to that point where you first pushed your knife through down near the tail. So now I've got my nice solid boneless piece of walleye fillet here. Now, Shane, if you can still hear me, do you want me to demonstrate with the other side of the fish in case people didn't see the whole part of it the first time through?
Yeah, if you want to cut up the other side too, by all means.
Okay, so all I'm going to do is take that walleye and I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to do the exact same thing except in the opposite direction. So I'm starting by lifting up the pectoral fin, and I'm going to make a vertical cut right behind the head. I'm going to hold the head, just give some pressure so I can get down through the fish. Once I've gotten down through the fish, again, it's going to stop when it hits the backbone. I'm going to turn that knife so the cutting edge is pointed towards the tail. I'm just going to make this short little sawing motion just on the upside of the dorsal fin. I'm just going to keep going until I get down near the tail where it starts to narrow out. I'm going to push that through. You'll see it come out the other side. And I'm just going to finish by pulling that knife through. Now, if you didn't see this before, what I'm going to do is put some pressure on that fillet, on that first, that cut that I just made by lifting up with my thumb. And I'm going to take the tip of my knife and I'm just going to go all the way down, and I'm just going to keep nicking it with just with the tip, which is separating the flesh from the fin or from the fish. And as you do this, you'll feel the tip of your knife hit hard things, which are the rib bones, the rib cage. As I do that, I want to turn and follow the ribs up and around. This is how I learned to fillet fish from my grandfather, so that all the bones stay in the fish and not in the fillet that you're going to take out and cook. So I'm just going to follow those ribs until I get to the end of them. Then I'm going to turn the knife, point it back down, come down the other side of the rib cage with that tip again until I'm down to the belly where that white peritoneum starts showing up, which is right there. I like to go into the fish just above that, and then just come down the length right until you get to the tail. All right, so here's our filleted walleye. All the meat is gone. Interestingly, this is a female. Here's the egg sac right here, full of eggs that will be or would have been laid next spring. So I'm going to get rid of this carcass here. I'm going to put it back in the cooler. All right. So if you're still with me, I'm going to show how you get the fillet off the skin, because now we've got two fillets, but the skin and the scales are still there. There's a very easy way to separate the flesh from the fin or from the skin. I put the skin side down. I use something hard like this board that I have here. I'm going to make a little incision, and I'm going to kind of pinch the fish into the board with my fingernail. Make a little incision until I hit the underside of the skin. And then I'm just going to turn it sideways so it's on a very severe angle. And I'm just going to slide it down the board, following that skin and fillet until it comes off the skin. So now I've got my boneless walleye fillet right here. No skin on it. Skin has been separated. I'm going to do that with the other side. Make that first incision, pinch with my fingernails. And I'm just going to take that knife at a really, really low, sharp angle, and I'm just kind of following the skin underneath the fillet until it comes completely off. So here's my skin, here's my fillet. All right, so what's nice about this is, like I said, I've completely separated the fillet, the flesh from the fish with no bones. All the ribs are still in the fish, the skin is off, and it's nothing but nice, solid, white, flaky meat ready to cook. So I'm just going to give this a rinse in the sink, get any scales and blood off that came from the fish while I was filleting it, and then we'll go from there.
And Shawn, this technique you used for filleting, this can be used on perch and a whole other host of like whitefish that folks are eating, right?
Yeah, that's a great point, Shane. The technique I use works for any species. It's a little bit more finicky if you're doing it with a smaller fish. You know, bass, walleye, stuff like that are a little bit bigger, it's easier to feel the rib bones and get them out. But I do the same thing, quite honestly, with crappie and yellow perch. I know other people will just cut the fillet off and leave the bones in the fillet and then take them out after the fact. But I find it just as easy because I'm just so used to doing it, taking it out as I remove the fillet. So all I'm doing is just in some cold water. I'm just kind of giving it a quick rinse, getting any scales off that might have got stuck to the fish while I was cleaning it. And at the same time as I'm giving it a little rinse, I can kind of feel, the fillets with my fingers, and occasionally I'll feel a bone that I missed, and so you just pull it out at the time. But those ones felt good. So I'm going to come back over here. All right. I need to move this stuff here because I'm all done cleaning the fish. Use some cardboard. I'm just going to get that out of the way.
And it is definitely easier to fillet a walleye or any fish outside of your kitchen. It leaves much less of a mess to have to clean up.
Like I said, I have a laundry. I have a laundry sink in the basement that I do all my filleting over top of. Kind of keeps the mess to a minimum upstairs.
Yeah.
All right, so what I'm going to do is show some kind of a really simple breading that I like to use. I'm also going to get the oil heating up here. I'm going to turn the stove on and get it going. Some people will cook the whole fish like this. My family likes to eat fish fingers. So usually what I do is kind of cut the fish into smaller pieces. So this is, the first thing I'll do is I'll just go down the fish and make smaller individual chunks. They seem to be easier to eat that way instead of one large chunk of fish. And fish like this will feed our family quite easily for dinner, but there's only two sides. So when you chunk it, it's easier to divvy up among everybody. All right, so okay, so I've got all my fish chunks here ready to go. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is prepare our breading. I've got 3 ingredients, well, kind of 4 that I like to use for a breading, and it's really simple. It's plain white flour. I never measure any of this stuff. Put a little flour in there. Next one is just some Italian breadcrumbs. I like to shake that in there. Gives it a little bit of texture. And then the last thing, and this is something I've started doing more recently, is Panko Crumbs. These are also breadcrumbs, but they're Japanese and they're already been baked, and they're very, very crispy. And they give your fish a nice crunch on the outside. So get a fork. I just sort of mix those 3 ingredients together. Flour, Italian breadcrumbs, just for a little seasoning is why I use the Italian ones. And then the panko crumbs, panko breadcrumbs, which when they fry up will really crisp up the outside of your fish. Okay, so next most important part is an egg wash. So I just take a couple of eggs, put them in a bowl. And then I forgot to get the milk out. Just a little splash of milk. Just like you're making scrambled eggs, basically. So what this does is you're going to dip your fish pieces into the egg wash first before you roll them in the breadcrumb mixture. And that just lets the breading stick to the fish a little bit better. All right, so I like to get a little line going here in order of what I'm going to do it in. My first bowl is the egg wash dip. Second bowl is the breading, and then I have a plate for the fillets ready to go. So I like to just put a handful in here. This is where, so have a cloth or some paper towels. Kind of stir your chunks around in the egg wash. You don't really need them, super coated. It's just a little moisture or wetness to the outside with the egg. And then I put them in the bowl with the breadcrumbs. I like to roll them around a bit. And then just sort of shake them off and put them on the plate. And I'm going to do this. I won't do all the fish right now. It's just kind of repetitive, but I'll do enough to get going in the pan, and then we can talk a little bit about walleye. Oh, I missed the egg wash because I'm not paying attention.
Do you ever use the cheek meat, Shawn? It was mentioned in one of the comments by Doug Connors.
That's a great point. I did not get into that this time because it was just a little bit too complicated, and with the internet cutting out like that, it was too it was going to lead us down a path. But yeah, what Doug mentions is a great point. So I can show it a little bit later. I won't take it out, but I'll show where it's located. But walleye, between the eye and the opercular flap, have a cheek that's actually pretty deep and thick and wide, and you can get quite a chunk of meat off of it. About a silver dollar size chunk of meat usually, and you kind of have to carve it out in a disc shape, and it ends up being like a little cone. Because it's flat on the surface, obviously, and then you kind of dig down into it to get that chunk out. But people say that the meat there, the cheek meat, tastes a little sweeter, and I think I probably would agree with that. It's got a little bit of different flavor, and most folks that I know that are walleye enthusiasts, what they'll do is they'll remove the cheek meat, but they'll save them, and they'll accumulate them over a season until they have a bag. And then they have a cheek fry. That's really, there's not enough meat there. It's literally like a bite.
That sounds delicious,
and,
though. Speaking of up.
Yeah. So it's pretty good. So, all right. The egg wash looks like the batter is holding nicely. I'm just kind of rolling it in. My fingers, this is where it gets messy. So. Start with clean hands.
It's a great thing to do with kids. I know kids love getting their fingers all dressed up.
So I'm just going to go to the sink here, take this excess batter off my fingers. I've got the pan going on the stove.
So where could folks, if they're not sure where to be fishing for walleye, whether it's during the winter or during the summer, where could folks be looking for it?
Yeah, so great question. Walleye season is probably worth mentioning. Starts on the first Saturday of May, and then it goes until the following March 15th. So walleye season is open right now. Starts in May, second Saturday, goes through the whole summer, fall, into the winter, and then ends on March 15th. And that period between March 15th and the first Saturday in May is sort of their spawning window. So they're being protected from harvest while they're spawning. we have, a number of lakes that have walleye populations in them. The primary one of which is where this one came from, Lake Champlain. And the department has been working quite hard for the last 15, 20 years, actually, on a walleye restoration program. We collect walleye in the rivers that they're spawning in and take their eggs, bring those eggs and milts into the hatchery, hatch the walleye fry, grow them until they're 1.5 to 2 inches long as fingerlings. Then we stock them back out into the lake. And that just kind of augments the population a little bit, helps get them by some of the natural bottlenecks and mortality that happens in the rivers when they're spawning on their own. So there's still wild reproduction happening out there, but we're augmenting it by taking some of those eggs from wild spawning walleye and hatching them in our hatchery and then putting them back out in the lake. That's happening in Lake Champlain. We also have similar programs in Chittenden Reservoir in Rutland County, just near the city of Rutland. Island Pond and Salem Lake in the Northeast Kingdom has the same programs going on up there. And Lake Carmi is one of our walleye lakes that actually is 100% naturally sustained. We don't do any hatchery work there. Those fish are wild, and there's a special regulation that's worth anglers noting, that the fishing regulation on Lake Carmi to protect those wild fish is different than the standard walleye regulation across the rest of the state. So it's worth looking at the fishing regulation book. The other place that there's a growing population of walleye and anglers are doing really well catching them is pretty much the length of the Connecticut River. White River Junction all the way down to Retreat Meadows area, the West River, that's a really popular spot. But even upriver further north, walleye numbers have been growing in recent years. So those are the primary walleye waters in the state.
Awesome.
Yeah, they're sort of an open water fish. You really have to know what you're doing in the winter or in the summertime to try to find them, because they roam a lot. They chase schools of perch. They tend to be located more in deep water, but the time and place that's really popular to catch a walleye is in May, when the season first opens after the second Saturday, because a lot of those post-spawn walleye that have finished laying their eggs are still in the rivers. And so you see a lot of activity by anglers going into these rivers and trying to catch those fish after they've spawned. The second most popular time to catch them is in the wintertime, and that's fast approaching. Walleye can be caught around shoals and reefs and sunken islands where there's a lot of rock. That's sort of their natural habitat, is rock and gravelly areas. And they're very bottom oriented, so you lower a minnow on a tip up right to just a few inches off the bottom, and they're most active at night. If you look at a walleye, they have really big eyes. They see very, very well in the dark. So right at sunup and right at sundown are the best times to catch one.
Nice. And I know for folks who maybe aren't familiar with ice fishing, this year Vermont Fish and Wildlife is doing a thing they're calling educational patrols. So on different bodies of water throughout the state, folks can go out, they could set up for some ice fishing, and there's going to be game wardens going around and talking with people and giving them tips and tricks. So I just put a link in the chat there you could find where those educational patrols are going to be taking place and at what time. And I would highly suggest, if you have any questions, give it consideration going out during those times, because as you could tell, Vermont Fish and Wildlife is just full of great knowledge and awesome people that are doing really good work here in the state.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. That's something that we've just started doing this winter that's going to be exciting, I think. See how that goes. So, all right, our oil is ready. I've just got about an inch of vegetable oil in my cast iron pan here. I like using cast iron. Holds and retains the heat better, I think. And it's more of an even temperature. So I'm just going to take a pair of tongs, and I'm just going to drop these pieces of walleye. I've had it heating up on about medium high heat, but now that it's hot, I've dialed it back to sort of medium low. Most people who cook know the way to test if your oil is ready. Get your finger wet, shoot a couple of drops of water into that oil. If it sputters like that, it's ready to go. All right, so we're just going to put these walleye right in here. And like I said, I only had one walleye, so I can't really, you know, it's a little harder to cook just 2 pieces for a family. So I've always done this and cut my fish into smaller pieces. I think it cooks more evenly that way too. It's just a little you know, tip that I like to do. You don't want to crowd your pan either. I fry everything in batches, so I didn't quite get everything in there that I breaded. But this is going to cook fairly quick. You don't want to burn the outside of your breading. So make sure your oil's not too hot, but you want it to sizzle when you put it in there. So we're going to give it about a minute to a minute and a half on this side, and then I'm going to roll them over. This is in a deep fryer, so you do have to turn your fish halfway through its cooking, just to make sure it cooks evenly all the way through and it crisps the top. And this was a fairly large walleye, so the pieces were quite thick up towards the back. You can see that one side of the walleye is actually sticking out of the oil, which is the other reason why you want to turn it after about a minute. I just like to kind of move it around, and as you touch it, you'll feel that fish is starting to, you know, firm up. Just going to get a spoon. I like to turn it over, make sure, see where I'm at. Give it a little bit more time. After I turn them over, I'm going to show you how to make a tartar sauce. Again, that's how my family likes to eat it. Some people will serve it just with, you know, plain or a little bit of vinegar and salt or ketchup, but my favorite is tartar sauce. And making homemade tartar sauce is about as simple as it gets. I'm going to show you how to do that. Let's roll these over here. You can see they've kind of developed a golden brown. That's what you want. Now, the second side is going to cook faster than the first side. So you don't want to disappear for a minute or two because you'll come back and it's going to be burned. So we're just going to let that sizzle here for a minute. After I take them out, I'm going to put them on this plate right here. I like to put a couple of pieces of paper towel on the plate, let that oil drain off while it cools. So, you know, this is about a straightforward and simple recipe as you can get. And it works for every kind of fish. I do this with crappie, I do it with yellow perch, I do it with pumpkin seed and bluegill sunfish. You could do it with the northern pike. Northern pike are a little different and more difficult to fillet, so I wouldn't recommend a beginner trying that unless you watched a couple of YouTube videos on how to take boneless fillets off a pike. But this is really, you know, it retains the true flavor of the fish, but it gives it a little bit of nice crunch. The other way to do walleye, I think, that is quite popular is to bake it. And we didn't have time for that tonight. That, you know, takes 20 or 30 minutes in the oven to bake it, like a lemon pepper coating. That's good too, but I think this is our favorite way to do it. All right, so I think we're getting there. I'm gonna give it one more minute. We'll come over here real quick, and we'll talk a little bit about the tartar sauce. So basically, tartar sauce is 3 ingredients. It's mayonnaise, sweet relish, and a little bit of lemon juice. And again, I don't measure anything when I cook, so I put a couple of large dollops of mayonnaise in a bowl. Just a little bit of sweet green relish. And then I take a bottle of, I'll use fresh lemons if I have them. I didn't have any today, so I'm just going to take a bottle of lemon juice, about 1 cap full, and stir it around.
So simple. It's amazing how the
That's
condiments are
that's
so
it.
easy to make.
Yeah, people get a little worked up about condiments, but very easy. All right, so we're back to the fish here. I'm just checking the other side, rolling it back over, make sure we're good. Looks like they're all well cooked. Didn't go beyond, that's for sure. So I'm going to take them out. Our little fish fingers here.
And do you recommend seasoning them right out of the pan, Shawn, or just whatever your preference is?
Yeah, if you want to season them, after you take them out, some people put a little Old Bay seasoning on it or just salt and pepper or whatever. But I find that the batter or the breading that I use, with the Italian breadcrumbs and the Panko crumbs and the flour, it doesn't really need any seasoning. You're going to get the flavor of the fish. You're going to get the crunch of the breading. And if you want, your condiment of choice, for us, it's just a little spot of homemade tartar sauce. It's good. I really don't think, spicing it up too much is necessary. I think it takes a little away from the fish. So, yeah.
My
So
least favorite part of this. My least favorite part of this show is seeing you all make these amazing things and not being able to taste them.
Yeah, I can imagine. There's been some good stuff on this show, and it's fun to watch. And thanks for inviting me to be part of it. So here we have a couple of pieces of walleye all ready to go. Don't try to eat it right away. Give it a couple of minutes to cool down. But what I like to do, I'll put a platter out like this on the table. Excuse me, I just ate a piece of breading. It's stuck in my throat.
Don't die.
Yeah. So yeah, I just what I like about these smaller pieces is that they cook quicker. They stay firm. They get nice and crunchy, and they're bite size. So yeah, just take a bite, dip it in your tartar sauce a little bit. Let me see the foam. Really good.
Yeah, look at that. That's amazing. And we have some folks in the comments saying different ways to bread it. I think the nice thing is you really can't go wrong. And walleye is such a versatile fish in and of itself, and it just takes on a lot of that flavor. So whatever way works for you all, by all means. And again, the condiments too. The condiments are pretty easy to make if folks are feeling up for it. Philip mentioned you can make your own mayo pretty easily. I know folks who make their ketchup or hot sauce, and it goes great on sandwiches. So
if I'm feeling a little ambitious or a little creative, I'll throw something else in the tartar sauce sometimes, mainly sriracha sauce. I'll just put a half a teaspoon of sriracha sauce in the bowl. It just gives it a little bit of spice, kicks it up a notch kind of thing. But like you said, the walleye, I think one of the reasons why walleye is so popular, probably equal to yellow perch, both being the same family of fishes, is that they're, as you can see, if you look at that piece that I just cooked and bit into, it's a very light, white, and flaky fish. It's quite mild. It's not overly fishy, so it doesn't turn a lot of people off that way. And so it lends itself well to a lot of different cooking methods. Like I said, you could bake it in the oven with your choice of coating, but frying it, I like to use these particular ingredients. But if you have, I know people who pound up cornflakes and mix that in with a little bit of flour or cornmeal or anything like that. It runs the gamut. You can do just about anything you want, and you can't ruin the fish.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Shawn, for showing us that walleye. And to close us out, I'm going to be demonstrating just a quick, nice side that could either go with the walleye, could go with really just about any type of protein that you're serving. So we're going to do a quick savory bread pudding. And Yeah, let's dive right in. So the nice thing about the bread pudding is that it's so easy to make. All you really need is a dish like this, one of your glass ones. We're using the smaller one. You need some old bread. I used some sourdough that I had made like over a week ago that was getting stale and then we didn't get to. So you just cut that up into chunks, throw that into a bowl, and yes, Eric says slaw goes really well with the white fish, definitely. And you can find some easy slaw recipes online. It's a great use of cabbage and carrots, especially this time of the year. So once you have your chunks of bread here in the bowl, uh, really, the bread pudding is super straightforward. So you can really use anything that is in your kitchen and in your fridge. So what I'm going to add is I shredded up some Cabot cheddar here. I'm just going to throw that in the bowl with the bread and give that a little stir. Last night, my partner and I, we had some chorizo sausage and some fried onions. So I'm just taking those, cutting those up a little bit, and I'm going to throw those in. And the nice thing, you could use any type of sausage. You could use bacon. I mean, shoot, you could use venison or any other wild ingredients that you think may go good, or whatever you really have a hankering for or is available. So I'm throwing all these ingredients into the bread, getting them all separated and tossed about. You want to make sure that you're seasoning pretty well. Just salt, pepper. You could use garlic powder, really anything that speaks to you when you're looking at your spice cabinet. Now, the one fun thing that I'm going to add into this bread pudding are some wild nettles that I ended up harvesting earlier this summer that were featured on one of the Vermont Wild Kitchen episodes earlier this year. And the nice thing about the nettles is that we've just been taking them out. They were frozen and we blanched them before throwing them into the freezer. And now we're just able to really take them out and use them whenever we want. And it adds just this rich, earthy, delicious taste. And it's full of nutrients, just jam-packed. And it's going to go really well with that Vermont salami chorizo, the sourdough, the Cabot cheddar, and those onions. And really, one of the things that I want to make sure folks know is that when you're cooking with wild ingredients like the walleye, or you're cooking with venison or bear or moose or really whatever that you are finding out in the woods, it really doesn't, and nothing really pairs better than with a nice Vermont fresh side. The Vermont Working Landscape and the farmers who steward it do an excellent job of growing some really delicious food that just pairs wonderfully. So I would highly encourage you all checking out the farm stands and the farms in your area, especially during this time. Those are the folks that really stepped up big to help feed their community. So once you have the bread ingredients all in there, you have all the add-ins that you want. The next step you want to do is make a custard. And the custard is a milk and egg type mixture. What they say on the recipe that I'll drop in the chat, 2 cups of milk or cream to about 6 eggs. But I know my partner doesn't really like eggs, so I'm just going to use an eyeball here. And I have some Stratford Creamery milk, which is absolutely delicious. So what you want to do is just mix that up. Get that nice and whisked up, just kind of like a little bit like the egg wash that Shawn was talking about, but much more milky. And what is super simple about this is then you're going to throw your bread ingredients right into that pan. Just load that up, make sure everything's all tossed up in there. And you're just going to pour your custard on top. Now, you want to wait for a few minutes while at least the custard ends up soaking into the bread and kind of makes that nice congealed, delicious bready pudding type of texture that you want. And folks recommend you can either make this the night before, throw it in overnight in your fridge and just pull it out and bake it whenever you're ready. So that's just a simple, super easy bread pudding. You can use any type of bread that's just sitting around the house. I would highly recommend it for even breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Yeah, so once that I'm going to put that in the oven once things soak in. It's sitting at 350. And our next thing before we finish out, I wanted to show off for folks a nice just seasonal cocktail featuring some really delicious, Vermont maple syrup. I see Nicole saying that she spies my cat, who is very, very upset that I'm in the kitchen and not feeding her right now. But so we go. So for this cocktail, it's a maple cranberry bourbon cocktail that's just going to be super delicious and really good for this time of the year as the holidays come up. So for this, you want about 4 ounces of cranberry. So you can just kind of eyeball that for whatever really works best for you. If you want a little bit less, it's mostly just to get that flavor in there. And with that 4 ounces of cranberry, you're going to add about 2 ounces of bourbon. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending on what your evening is going to look like for the rest of the night. And you're going to add about a 1/2 ounce to 3/4 of an ounce of orange liqueur. You could use Grand Marnier or just some basic triple sec works well too. And you're going to add about 1 ounce of Vermont maple syrup. As we all know, there's really nothing much better than adding Vermont maple syrup to just about anything and everything that you're either cooking with or you're drinking with. And what that does is just add that nice sweet flavor and let you support your friends and neighbors and family who are out there. And you're just going to go and give that a nice shake. And it's about as simple as that. You can garnish that with an orange, with a lime. Absolutely delicious. I know my partner's going to love that. So, folks, with that, what we wanted to do is we just wanted to, we're going to wrap this up. We appreciate folks sticking through the technical difficulties as the snowstorm definitely interrupted us a little bit, and the audio difficulties as well. And I just want to give a big thank you to Shawn Good from Vermont Fish and Wildlife for joining us and really showing off his amazing walleye and really giving us the knowledge and the skills. For folks who maybe haven't gone walleye fishing before, check the chat. You know, we put some information about ice fishing and educational patrols. And also, we got to give a shout out to Shawn's cameraman as well for doing such an excellent job. So, Shawn.
Well, thanks again, Shane, for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. And folks, we hope you all have a happy holidays. We're going to be doing this again next month on the 3rd Thursday in January. If you all have ideas about different things that you might want to see cooked, feel free to drop us a line on Facebook, or also just share your wild creations on Instagram or any social media. You can use VT Wild Kitchen as a hashtag and Rooted in Vermont. And as this continues going, we hope to feature any number of you in the kitchen, because again, this is just a bunch of amateur cooks showing you how easy it can be to eat wild and eat Vermont. So again, very amateur for sure. So again, folks, thank you for joining us.
Especially
Shawn, I hope you all enjoy your walleye. I am very, very jealous that I can't partake with you.
Yeah, we're about to finish off this platter before my wife gets home. She's going to be mad.
And she's going to smell it and see the residue from the actual butchering that happened. All right,
yeah,
folks.
I have to do a complete deep clean here in the kitchen before she gets home. So,
well, we appreciate that. So we're going to sign off, and we'll talk to you guys in a month. So thank you for joining.